Do. Hello there, AP World people. Let's keep learning about Unit 2 stuff. We're talking about money. Talking about dollar bills, y'all. So, before this period of world history, paper money didn't exist. Plenty of cultures around the world had either coin based currencies, or I know in Africa they use lowry shells. And there's probably some other random assortment of things were used for money. I'm sure, like just chunks of gold. Salt was also a form of money back in the day, too. But the big change in the world during this period of the Silk Road was the creation of paper money. And at first, a lot of people were like, "What? Like paper has value?" Like people would look at this and be like, "What can you do with this? It's just paper. How is it valuable?" But they found out that you could create these forms of paper that were really hard to reproduce. Like even see some of this is like really really old money, and it's very useful to make trade so easy, because in the past there were barter economies, and a barter economy is where you go to market, you have a chicken, you're like, man, I really want a cow, so you just gotta keep finding. Eventually, oh, you find somebody who has a cow, but that person with a cow doesn't want a chicken, so then you have to go through all this process of back and forth bartering. And I've got this game activity that hopefully we'll play even in an online setting that is all about bartering along the Silk Road. But once paper money is invented, well, everything's so much easier. So there you go. And with paper money, the economies of the world really start to increase in their size, their scale, what they're capable of doing. Islamic culture created this banking system where banks could issue loans to merchants. They could organize risky, expensive trade missions as long as they promised to pay the bank back even more money if their trade mission was successful. So, by taking these economic risks, for the most part, the risks paid off, so it made the Middle East even more wealthy. Europeans, they created a whole economy based on the gold standard. And what that means is all those original bills, those pieces of paper, and it's true with American currency too. If you find some like super old American dollar bills that are more than 100 years old, it'll say on the bill, it'll say something like, you can go to a bank and redeem this for 1 ounce of gold. So it's like, hey, it's literally just a piece of paper saying that trade this in for gold. And that's the concept of the gold standard. We don't do the gold standard anymore today. I'll explain why that is, but once that happens in like the 1920s. So it created this concept of credible guarantor loans. And credible guarantor loans, that's saying this piece of paper can be traded for gold. So this piece of paper is worth something. We'll vouch for you if, and you just got to pay us back at some point. So it's really increasing global economy and making trade and travel so much easier. Because who wants to bring a chicken to market every day? Instead, you could just bring a piece of paper, make the trade super easy. And nowadays, like people don't even use paper currency. It's all in our banking cards and on the internet. So it's even more advanced today. All right, money, money, money. Dollar bills, y'all. Okay, next one. So a lot of new ideas also traveled along the Silk Road. I think last time I talked about how religion was spreading around the world, but also some great concepts. Like China had the most advanced government bureaucracy in the world. China had all these people who worked for the emperor, who made sure the country was running smoothly, who organized various aspects of the country. And those elements from Chinese culture started to spread first to India, then to the Middle East, and then to a degree to Europe. The Arabic world gave Greek and Roman medical knowledge everywhere. So everyone's now like learning how to heal people better. I mean, the Europeans, they freaking never learned until like the 1800s. But yeah, and and you're wondering like, well, Mr. Brown, if it's Greek and Roman medical knowledge, why didn't it start in Europe? That's because the Europeans destroyed all the copies of their important books back during the Dark Ages in like the 800s. So the Europeans were dumb and didn't know how to cure people, so they had to relearn their knowledge from the Arab world. And then Arabic numerals, okay? Literally everyone in the world started using Arabic numerals around this time. And I'll say, out of all the things that have synchronized into global cultures Arabic numerals is the number one thing. Literally every country in the world uses numerical symbols as Arabic numerals. And it was super convenient when I was traveling around the world. You know, you go to a shop in Korea and then you see 1000. You're like, hey, it's 1,000. That would have been really difficult if they wrote it in simplified Chinese. But yeah, Arabic numerals. Every country in the world started using them during this time, and they're still. It's like the best thing today. Okay, all other number systems were trash. Arabic numbers top tier. Uh, Another thing is a lot of cultures didn't really have written languages, or maybe they had written languages, but they were really weird and really awkward. Like, for example, the original version of the Latin language, the grammar structure made no sense. Once again, Europe, boo. But during this period of the Silk Road, the idea of Uyghur script, see the Uyghurs, human geokids remember them, the Uyghur script made its way to Europe, and Europeans were like, hey, this is a significantly simpler way to write our language, to make grammar make sense. And it really simplified a lot of the structures of, well, they still weren't speaking Latin at this time, so they're already branching off into German and French and all that. But Europeans now have a much more easily written language, and it's all a result of this greater interaction and greater trade. So, boom, ideas traveling along the Silk Road, super duper awesome stuff. Okay, and then inventions. These are sort of also ideas, but they're just, physical things. The Chinese, because the Song Dynasty was top tier, they had a lot of cool inventions that traveled around the Silk Road and were introduced to all the countries that it touched. We're talking about gunpowder. Hey, the basis of guns. That's going to be a big deal in world history. The clock and the compass. The clock and the compass are really important for ship navigation. It's a way you can sort of tell how far your ship has gone and know where north is. That's important. The Europeans actually contributed something. They created the heavy plow, and there's a picture of it right there at the bottom of my screen. And the heavy plow is designed to make land that's not very good for agriculture into land that's pretty useful for agriculture. So once the heavy plow got spread around the world, more and more land was able to be used for farming. Europeans also had some really smart shipbuilding techniques, especially the Vikings. Man, those northern Europeans, they knew what was up. Um, the Islamic world contributed a ton. They contributed the camel saddle, and I read this whole thing where a historian argued that of all these inventions on this page, the camel saddle was actually the most important one because it allowed camels to not only hold people, but you could also put like this specialized camel saddle where the camel could carry this huge amount of material, and so it allowed for those caravanserais I talked about in the last presentation, where you could just have like 20 camels haul like 2 tons of goods. So camels turned into these great ways of transporting goods around the world. So it basically turns camels into trucks. There you go. The Islamic world had advanced math, advanced medicine, star charts, and then a tool called the astrolabe. There's a picture of the astrolabe in the bottom right corner there, and it's sort of like a compass, but it's you could line up the astrolabe with the horizon of the sea, and if you connected the astrolabe to certain stars, you could see exactly where you were in the ocean, and determine what direction you had to take to get to land. Because look, if you're out there in the middle of the ocean, you don't know where the heck you are. The ocean's big. It's scary. A lot of people thought it went on forever, but the astrolabe was a way where you could actually. It's sort of like. Is it like GPS? You can make that comparison. GPS is obviously way better. But yeah, the astrolabe, know where you are in the ocean, pretty great. The other thing I'll mention is India provided a lot of sanitation concepts. The toilet was invented in India. A lot of places around the world didn't really have the concept of toilets or bathrooms, but India shared that with the world. Thanks, India. And isn't that funny that India's sanitation today is like notably really bad? But that's where toilets came out of. So more ideas being shared around the world. showing how these cultures in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are now getting more and more connected, and as a result, everybody's benefiting. So, super cool. All right, let's keep moving on. Okay, the world was also starting to have specialized zones of production. Whenever we talk about economic stuff in the history of the world, and heck, even in today's world, it's sort of like every region of the world specializes in certain things. And nothing was more true this time than of clothing. Europeans were known for wool and linen, India was known for cotton, and China was the only place in the world where you could find silk. And I know for almost all of history, even up until like the 1920s, Europeans were like, we want to get some silk pajamas. Hey, we're super rich. We got silk pajamas. We're so cool. Um, yeah, so different styles of clothing determine your and it was also true like China, they really loved linen clothes. Here I am wearing a linen overshirt right now. um, you can see down there I've got examples of all this. Those are wool socks, a linen shirt, and I'm pretty sure the undershirt, and probably even the one I'm wearing here, is made out of cotton base. It might be linen. I'm sort of unsure. Um, yeah, think about your own closet. Okay, what do you have? All of these styles of clothes? Do you have wool socks? Do you have linen shirts? Do you have cotton undershirts? Do you have silk pajamas? I think silk isn't super common because it is the most expensive quality of clothing. But Europeans loved silk clothes. Once again, if you get a time machine, go back in time to Europe, get a whole bunch of silk pajamas. You'll sell each one for like its weight in gold. Okay. Yeah. So, boom. World is specializing in. Oh, and I got to mention the word textile. Textile is just a fancy word. Anything that's sort of cloth related. So all of your clothing is textiles. Curtains are textiles. Maybe even carpets and rugs are textiles if we get kind of technical. But the word textile comes up so much in this class, so just be aware of what it means. All right, moving on. So, yeah, trade routes. Now, the Silk Road definitely had some pretty big hubs. There were always a couple places you would generally go through when you were doing the Silk Road thing. Like, if you're trying to go from the Silk Road into Europe, you're pretty much guaranteed to stop at Istanbul. Istanbul is that big city right on the border of Asia and Europe in modern day Turkey. Cairo, the big city in Egypt, kind of the way that leads into the Indian Ocean. And well, Baghdad was the biggest city in the Muslim world before the Mongols tore it apart. But for, I guess, before, before the Mongols wrecked the dang thing, Baghdad was a huge trading city that connected the Middle East to the rest of Asia. Tangier and Timbuktu, those were the major caravan cities connecting Africa to Europe, especially Tangier. And the Italian cities, Venice, Genoa, and Florence, they were sort of the, I guess you could call them the start points or the end points of the Silk Road to Europe. They pretty much controlled all the trade coming into or out of Europe. It made them super duper rich. And I think, well, I bring them up in the next unit. Maybe I bring them up in Unit 4. But because Venice, Genoa, and Florence got so much money from the Silk Road, they're going to be kind of the basis for this European event called the Renaissance. So money is power, kids. And all this trade and interaction with the rest of the world is really going to kick off world history and bring it towards closer and closer to the modern era in which we live in today. All right, ba-bam. So now let's talk a little bit about Africa. So the Indian Ocean trade did connect southern Africa to the rest of the world, and the caravans through the Sahara Desert connected parts of northern, or sort of northern sub-Saharan Africa to the rest of the world. But let's specifically talk about the Swahili coast. There's this big old city today in Tanzania, and it was there back during this time period too. The city's called Dar es Salaam. It's Arabic, so guess who founded that city? Well, it was a bunch of Arab traders who were trading around the world during this time, and they created this trading city in southern Africa. Also, the Kingdom of Zanzibar was created in this time, and these were really prosperous trade ports that connected sub-Saharan Africa to the rest of the world. I said earlier that Africa was sort of like an island that didn't do a lot of connection with the rest of the world, but now that's changed. Africa is a part of the game now. And these prosperous places along the eastern coast of southern Africa, they were getting a whole bunch of Islamic cultural influences. And I even know that the Chinese treasure fleet sailed all the way down here, and they found some ancient Chinese coins in Zanzibar. I think that's so cool. And what's interesting is the language Swahili, which is a language my sister speaks. It's the most common language of southeastern Africa. It has a whole lot of Arabic influences, so it once again shows the connectivity this region had with the rest of the world. Oh yeah, see, East African gold was found in Europe and China. That's cool. Um, but yeah, so this is the connecting the whole world together through trade, and especially through Arab sea-based merchants. Cool stuff. Okay, so now let's talk about the northern parts of sub-Saharan Africa, the Sahara Trade Network. Many of these African kingdoms created these caravan routes with, camels along caravanserais along the Sahara Desert. 50% of the world's gold comes out of Africa, especially from this one river in what part of Africa is it? It's sort of in the western coast of right along where the Sahara hits sub-Saharan Africa, called the Gambia River. Look it up online. You should know where it is. Anyway, the Gambia River, by all accounts, was just full of gold. Like, oh my, like I think I can confidently say 25% of all the gold on planet Earth came out of that one river. And that river was mined the heck out of by this guy named Mansa Musa. He was the king of Mali. And Mansa Musa, he went on Hajj, so he went all the way to Mecca. He was a Muslim, and he gave out gold everywhere he went. The story goes that he gave out so much gold that the prices, or the local economies of many African and Arab countries was shattered, because they just was like, oh, there's literally tons of gold now. The prices of everything has changed. And then another thing that I definitely have to mention is salt was really rare and valuable in Europe. Like, there's really like no salt mines in Europe. And salt is really important for preserving food. In fact, for parts of history, Europeans would trade gold for salt and be like, yeah, it's equal value. Okay, like today, salt is, you just get it for free in restaurants. Like, we don't, like, salt's not a big deal. But salt is really, really important for how food tastes and for preserving meat, especially. So, salt was another huge part of this trade, and a lot of it came out of Africa. So, oh, and yeah, I should add this. Mansa Musa, the richest human being ever in world history. I mean, even if you account for inflation, this guy's got more money than Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and all the super rich people we have today. So talk about the 1% richest guy in the world. And yeah, and I'm also confident to say this. So during the Sahara Trade Network period and also the Swahili Coast period, a lot of these African kingdoms were starting to grow and starting to flourish. So this is really like the best time period for the continent of Africa. After this unit, things in Africa are going to get real bad. So, thumbs up for Africa during this period, and just know that it's going to go downhill from here. So, all right, there we go. Moving on to the next one. So yeah, now let's talk about Southeast Asia. So as I said, these Muslim merchants, they're going down to Africa, setting up cities, doing the whole trade thing. They're going around India, doing the trade thing. And then they go all the way down to, what is it, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines. And there's a bunch of these Muslim merchants, and they set up little cities and little trade outposts there too. And the Islamic scientists of this time period were really good at deciphering the weather patterns of the Indian Ocean. For so many years of history, the Indian Ocean just confused people because, believe it or not, the Indian Ocean has a lot of crazy storms and like really unpredictable weather called monsoons. But the Islamic scientists studied it, and they found out that you can sort of predict when a monsoon is about to happen. So they would just like not send trade ships out before a storm would hit, and every time they would predict a storm, and then, oh hey, it's going to be good weather for the next 20 days, launch the ships, you'll all be safe. And it's pretty awesome that they did that, because now they could very easily and quickly navigate this ocean. So yeah, pretty great. They figured out the monsoon winds. That's something you definitely got to know. Um, and a lot of these Muslim traders, they established permanent trade settlements. The Sultanate of, oh, I'm going to say this wrong, Guarajat in India, obviously a Muslim place. The Sultanate of Malacca in modern day Singapore, and the Sultanate of Brunei, and it's still there today. Brunei is still its own country. It's pretty close to the Philippines. So it's showing you how the Muslim trade networks still have a lasting cultural legacy to this day. So, bam, Southeast Asia getting the Muslim influence going on. Yeah, get it, Islam, make it happen. All right, moving on. So, yeah, important. And this is an important thing to remember for next unit. So, it's weird for me to include this now, but there's so much historical setup. I really feel like I have to include it now. So, I've mentioned that the Islamic world figured out all this, these ship navigation techniques. The Chinese world created the compass and the clock, and through the Silk Road, these ideas and these inventions made their way to Europe. And some rich Europeans were like, what if we combine all this knowledge together? We could create some super duper ships that could effectively sail from Europe, will sail west and hit China. So this is sort of the basis for the ships that Christopher Columbus will later use to connect the Americas to Europe. But I think an important concept in this class is it wasn't Europeans that said like, okay, we did it, we found all this technology, and we got the ship together to discover the new world. I mean, yeah, they put it together, but they synchronized and synthesized this knowledge from other cultures, and it sort of shows you that Europeans couldn't have done it alone. It's because of this interaction that these new ideas came to Europe, and that's what gave Christopher Columbus the technology and the ability to make it to this half of planet Earth. So, pretty cool. The Chinese compass, European lumber cutting technology, Indian sails, Islamic science. It's sort of like the puzzle to build the great ships that can travel across oceans. Every culture contributed. You could even say African salt kept the food what was it, fresh during these long 3-month voyages. So everything synchronized together. Yeah, that's definitely a big theme of this course. So know that. Okay, but now let's talk about the bad parts of world trade. And hey, we can all relate to this right now in the year 2020, can't we? So because the whole world is now super duper interconnected with trade, it also means that new diseases that sort of always were kind of hanging out in China are now spreading along these trade routes and are now interacting with people all around the world that have never interacted with these diseases before. Once again, 2020, coronavirus, hey. So it's still happening, kids. Yeah, now I got to talk about the Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague. They're the same thing. And the reason why the Black Death was so bad was because the whole world was interconnected. If the Black Plague had an outbreak 200 years before, it probably would have stayed in China and would have never really gone anywhere. But historians have proved that the Black Death traveled along the trade routes, and everywhere that traders went, the Black Death was sort of following right behind them. Because the disease lived inside of fleas, and these fleas would sort of hang out on rats, and rats would follow the trade routes, and then boom, the plague spread. It started in China, and it devastated the entire Eurasian world, especially Europe and the Arab world. The Arab world doesn't usually gets kind of ignored. So many so many historical sources just focus on the European experience. But I have to be really clear on this. The Islamic world got thoroughly wrecked by the Black Death as well. Between 1347 and 1351, so this was 4 years long, 50% of all people on planet Earth died. They died terrible, painful deaths. This is absolutely the worst disease, the worst pandemic of all time. It might feel like the coronavirus sucks in 2020, but I'm 1,000% sure that this disease was way worse, especially if you look at 50% of everyone being dead. And something I really got to mention too, which will lead us into the next period of world history, is because half of all the people died, many Europeans who are, all about hashtag Team Jesus, they were obviously praying once their family members or themselves got sick from this disease. And every time the people died, so a lot of Europeans were like, we prayed to God to get rid of this disease, and we all died anyway. Maybe life isn't all about God. Okay, so this was kind of a break in the thought that Jesus' life is the solution to all problems. Um, and then also Europeans. Wow. Once again, see, I've got all these sources from Europeans, but the Arab world also got hit hard. But Europeans, they came up with these Christian-based solutions to the Black Death. They said, like, if someone gets this disease, you should touch their body, you should kiss them on their lips, you should sleep right next to them, you should hold them and pray on them. And every time that happened, the disease just spread further and further and further. So people began to start thinking about things outside of Jesus' life and were like, maybe we should learn about science and math more. Um, yeah, there you go. So this is definitely a negative aspect of the world being interconnected. So definitely know this for a test or an FRQ or DBQ. But what I will say this, even despite the Black Death, of all the countries that got interconnected through this world trade, um, I mean, China did benefit, of course. The Arab world benefited financially, but the European world, I'm definitely capable of making this argument. The European world got so many inventions, so many ideas that it never had before. And the trade along the Silk Road really is what set Europe off to start what's ultimately going to be global conquest, okay? At the start of this class, during Unit 0, Europe was just a trash part of planet Earth. White people were dumb. White people just believed in Jesus and nothing else. But these ideas coming across the Silk Road, and then once the Black Death killed everybody and people were like, maybe we should think about other things, that's when the European economy and European creativity really started growing, and it was this event called the Renaissance. And we're going to see the effects of the Renaissance in the next unit. But Europeans started to think about inventing new things, drawing new things, changing new things, and that's sort of why after this unit, the European world is kind of the main character of world history. But they definitely could not have done it alone, and that's a huge concept of this course. All right, ba-bam. Oh, why do I have this slide in here? Yeah, I already said this. I don't know. I don't know why I have this slide twice. That was weird of me. I didn't double check this. Okay, well, yeah, I'm done. You don't have to write down this slide because you already have seen it. So, okay, anyway, peace out. That's it for Mr. Brown.